Princess Charlotte did something unexpected at a memorial service for fallen soldiers. She touched the public's and even the monarch's hearts by bowing her head. The details of this tragic encounter left people in disbelief. What started out as a solemn homage to fallen heroes evolved into an unforgettable royal moment. That day, Princess Kate was standing in front of her mirror in the Windsor Castle grounds, smoothing the black dress she had picked out with care. She had the appearance of a woman who had gracefully adapted to her role. However, today didn't feel like any other royal obligation. It was more important. 3 weeks prior, the invitation, written in the formal script that accompanied all royal events, had arrived. It was for a private memorial service for fallen troops. The royal family's attendance at such a private memorial was uncommon, if not unheard of. Kate had read the family's letters at night. They remained with her, each letter a tale of loss and bravery. Before leaving, Kate took one last look in the mirror because she knew that her presence would mean a lot to the families who were still in mourning. Emma, her secretary, smiled and stood silently beside her. She said, "Your Royal Highness, the car is ready whenever you are." Kate gave a nod and left. She only had on her wedding band and a pair of pearl earrings that Princess Diana used to own. It took roughly 20 minutes to drive to the memorial garden. Kate sat quietly as she observed Windsor life passing by on the streets. She was given a brief overview of the families she would be meeting by the event coordinator at the memorial. Only a few weeks after her 19-year-old son was sent to Afghanistan, Mrs. Henderson lost him. While assisting civilians, the Patel's daughter, a field medic, passed away. Additionally, the Morrison family lost a father who died protecting a school from an assailant, leaving behind 3 young children. Kate took her time exploring the garden, admiring its thoughtful design. In addition to a small plaque with their name, age, and a few words about their service, each fallen soldier was honored with a white rose. Each fallen soldier was honored with a white rose placed beside a small plaque bearing their name, age, and a few words about their service. There were no loud speeches, only the respect they deserved. Soon, the families arrived. Some carried framed photographs, while others held folded letters. One child clutched a small toy aeroplane. Mrs. Henderson was the first to speak to Kate. Her graying hair was neatly tied back, and she held a photograph of her son in his army uniform. She smiled softly, though her eyes were heavy with sadness. "Your Royal Highness," she said gently, "thank you for being here. David would have been proud." Kate reached for her hands, giving them a warm squeeze. "Mrs. Henderson, your son gave everything for our country. It's my honor to be here. It's the least I can do." Her son had given everything for his country. The least she could do, Kate thought, was be present to honor his memory. The elderly woman's eyes shimmered with emotion as Kate pressed her hands once more before quietly moving on to greet the next family. As she met others, each shared something different. Notes, drawings, all the small details that made it feel as though their loved ones were with them again, even if only for a moment. The meaning behind each item broke Kate's heart. The grief was already so great, she could not imagine it becoming heavier. Every encounter was deeply personal, yet carried the same undercurrent of love, sorrow, and pride. The Patels showed Kate the letters their daughter had sent from the field, filled with stories of saving lives and tending to the wounded. The Morrison children, just 6, 8, and 10 years old, brought drawings of their father in his military uniform. The youngest had written in crayon at the bottom, "My daddy is a hero." As the hour of the ceremony approached, Kate noticed several black vehicles pulling into the drive. The monarch had arrived, accompanied by other senior members of the royal family. For such an intimate event, this level of presence was rare and deeply meaningful. The day's proceedings would begin with tributes from relatives, followed by the quiet laying of garlands and a moment of silence. Kate had been asked to speak briefly, reflecting on the power of remembrance and the lives behind each name. She had spent days preparing, reading over every word. But now, after looking into the eyes of these families, she wondered if her words could ever truly bear the weight of what they had endured. Still, They had trusted her with their pain, and she had no intention of letting them down. Guests began taking their seats as silence settled over the garden. Kate offered a quiet prayer for strength, unaware that in just a short while, she would be part of a moment that would touch hearts far beyond Windsor. A lone trumpet began to play, its clear, mournful notes drifting over the gathering and setting the solemn tone. Kate stood alongside the royal family as the families of the fallen slowly settled in. The first to speak was Colonel Matthews, a decorated officer who had served alongside many of those being honored. His voice was calm, yet tinged with sadness, as he spoke of duty, friendship, and the bonds forged in hardship. Kate listened intently, though her eyes often wandered to the families seated before her. When the colonel stepped down, it was the family's turn to speak. Mrs. Henderson approached the small podium. Her steps weighted. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded her speech, yet her voice was steady. "David always wanted to help people," she began softly. "Even as a little boy, he would bring home injured birds and try to save them. So when he said he wanted to join the military, I wasn't surprised. He wanted to make the world better." Kate felt her chest tighten. Mrs. Henderson went on to describe the children David had met overseas, and how he had spent his allowance on school supplies for them. She stood tall, her grief hidden beneath remarkable composure. "He died doing what he believed was right," she concluded. "And though my heart is broken, I'm proud of the man he became. He lived with intent. That's all a mother could hope for." A heavy pause followed, thick with emotion. The weight of the moment was felt by everyone. Tissues were quietly drawn from pockets and purses. Even the royal protection officers, usually stoic, appeared misty-eyed behind their sunglasses. There was already so much grief in the air, but this was only the beginning. The next speaker, Priya Patel, was the younger sister of a fallen medic. Barely in her 20s, she had dark eyes bright with emotion as she stepped toward the podium. Kate immediately noticed her resemblance to the framed photograph of her late sister, Mira, displayed on the memorial table. "My sister Mira always knew she wanted to help people," Priya began, pausing to swallow the lump in her throat. From a young age, she dreamed of becoming a doctor. Joining the army gave her that purpose and a chance to give back. She spoke of Mira's letters home, filled with stories of those she had treated, injured soldiers, frightened children, even elderly civilians with nowhere else to turn. She used to say that even in war, even in the darkest corners of the world, there was always a touch of hope, Priya continued. She believed that healing someone was a way of reminding them that life still had meaning. Her words had the crowd in tears, but they were not the most moving of the day. The next speech would become what many later described as the most difficult moment of the morning. Sarah Morrison, widow of Staff Sergeant Tom Morrison, made her way to the podium. Small and unassuming, she carried herself with dignity as her 3 children, aged 6, 8, and 10, watched from the front row. "Tom always told our children that the greatest job in the world was keeping others safe," Sarah began, her voice low but clear enough to carry. "He believed that every child, no matter their background, deserved a chance to live, to learn, and to feel protected." She paused, her lips trembling, before continuing. "When he died shielding a school from harm, he wasn't just wearing a uniform. He was fulfilling a promise to us, to those children, and to the world." Kate blinked back tears. Sarah's words were steeped in love and courage. "Our children know their daddy is gone," Sarah went on, "but they also know he was a hero. They understand that somewhere in the world, other children are alive today because of their father." By now, there was not a dry eye in sight. Even members of the royal family seated nearby dabbed at their eyes. The Queen, usually composed beyond reproach, remained still, her expression solemn yet visibly moved. Out of the corner of her eye, Kate noticed Princess Charlotte, her small frame upright, but her gaze filled with sorrow. Yet it was the simple gesture that followed which caught everyone's attention. Charlotte bowed her head. She did it without glancing at her mother or anyone else. The gesture was so natural that it sent a ripple of emotion through the crowd. Yet Kate knew better than anyone that Charlotte was deeply moved by the grief in Sarah's words. The monarch leaned forward slightly, also visibly affected by the sadness. In the silence, Charlotte's bowed head became a quiet symbol of respect and empathy, warming the hearts of the families present. What happens next? Stay with us to find out. Afterwards, the wreath-laying ceremony began. Each family had prepared a simple tribute of white roses with fresh greenery and a ribbon carefully inscribed with the name of their loved one. Mrs. Henderson stepped forward first, kneeling briefly before her son's plaque and resting her fingers gently on his name before placing the wreath. The Patel family followed, with Priya laying the flowers, while her parents stood beside her. When it was the Morrison family's turn, Kate's breath caught in her throat. The children walked alongside their mother, each carrying a part of the floral arrangement. Together, they set it at the foot of their father's memorial plaque. Kate's eyes followed the youngest boy as he broke away from the group, reaching out with small fingers to touch his father's engraved name. A hush fell over the crowd, and a soft murmur of emotion swept through the garden. Then it was the royal family's turn. Kate stepped forward with her wreath, understated yet beautiful. As she approached the memorial wall, she paused at each name. These were not strangers. They were mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, real people who had given everything. The ceremony ended with 2 minutes of silence, broken only by the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. Kate stood with her head bowed, reflecting on the stories she had heard and the families she had met. She felt a deep gratitude for the sacrifices these soldiers had made, and profound respect for the families learning to live with their loss. As the silence lifted, Kate looked up to find the monarch watching her with an expression of approval and understanding. She realized that this day was about more than honoring the fallen. It was about showing these families that their sacrifice mattered to the entire nation. The formal part of the day was over, but Kate knew the most important moments were still ahead. The families would want time at the memorial to share memories and comfort one another. She intended to spend the rest of the morning with them, listening to their stories and offering what support she could. As the crowd began to disperse, she noticed many families forming small groups, speaking quietly together. For some, it was the first time meeting others who truly understood their loss. The ceremony had created a community bound by shared grief and mutual support. Kate decided to meet with each family, determined they would know their loved ones were remembered not just as names on a wall, but as unique individuals who had touched lives. Kate approached the Morrison family first, drawn by the sight of the 3 young children who were now playing quietly near their father's memorial plaque. The youngest, Tommy, was tracing the letters of his father's name with his small finger, while his older siblings, Emma and Jake, stood protectively beside him. Their mother, Sarah, watched with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. "Tommy understands that his daddy is a hero," Sarah said softly as Kate joined them. "But he still asks when daddy is coming home. It's the hardest question to answer." Kate knelt to Tommy's level, her formal dress touching the grass as she spoke to the little boy. "Your daddy was very brave," she said gently. "He helped keep other children safe, just like he kept you safe when he was here with you." Tommy looked up at Kate with wide, serious eyes. "Mommy says Daddy is watching us from heaven. Do you think he can see us now?" Kate felt her heart clench at the innocent question. "I think your daddy is always with you, Tommy. Every time you're kind to someone or help someone who needs it, you're just like your daddy." The boy seemed to consider this, then nodded before returning his attention to the memorial plaque. Kate stood and placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder, offering support as they watched the children process their grief in their way. Kate then turned her attention to the Patel family, who were gathered around a small display of photographs Priya had brought. The images captured Mira's life as a young girl in a school uniform, graduating from medical training, and in her final picture, proudly wearing her army uniform with a bright smile. The family took turns sharing memories, and Kate was welcome to listen. Mira was always the one who cared for everyone. said Priya's mother, Sunita. When she was little, she would play doctor with her dolls, always trying to make them better. We thought it was just a game, but she was already showing us the person she was destined to become. Priya's father, Raj, added, "She wrote to us about the children she treated overseas. She said watching them recover gave her the strength to keep going. Even in such difficult conditions, she found joy in helping others heal." Kate listened closely as each family member spoke, recognizing that sharing these stories was a vital part of their healing. The Patels had traveled from London for the ceremony, and Kate learned this was their first time visiting a memorial for their daughter. They had needed time to grieve in private before they could face such a public acknowledgement of their loss. Still, Kate found her conversation with Mrs. Henderson to be the most moving. The elderly woman had brought a box of her late son David's letters and showed Kate some of the photographs he had included. They depicted David in Afghanistan, playing football with local children using a makeshift ball, sharing his rations with families who had lost their homes, and working alongside local volunteers to build a small school. "He never wrote about the dangerous parts," Mrs. Henderson explained, her hands tenderly holding the treasured letters. "He only told me about the good things he was doing, the people he was helping. I didn't learn about the risks he faced until after he was gone." Kate studied the images, noticing the genuine joy on David's face as he interacted with the children. "He looks happy in these pictures," she remarked, as if he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. Mrs. Henderson smiled through her tears. "That's exactly who he was. David never did anything halfway. When he committed to helping people, he gave everything he had." Kate noticed, with some surprise, that the monarch had stayed at the ceremony longer than expected, quietly speaking with several family members. The king's presence meant the world to these families, and Kate could see how much comfort it brought them to know their sacrifice was being honored at the highest level. As the morning went on, Kate became deeply engaged in conversations with the families. She learned about David Henderson's love for music and how he had taught local children to play simple instruments crafted from recycled materials. She heard of Meera Patel's dream to open a medical clinic in her hometown after completing her military service. She discovered that Tom Morrison had planned to become a teacher upon returning from deployment, inspired by his work helping to rebuild schools overseas. These were not just soldiers who had died in service. They were people with aspirations, plans, and lasting connections to the communities they had served. Each story Kate heard deepened her understanding of what sacrifice truly meant. Yet, this was not the day's most profound moment. That came when Kate realized that several families were making plans to stay connected. The ceremony had forged bonds between people who understood each other's loss in ways no one else could. Mrs. Henderson exchanged contact details with Sarah Morrison, offering to help with the children whenever needed. The Patel family spoke about visiting the Morrisons in their hometown, building a network of support that would reach far beyond this single day. Kate understood this was perhaps the most meaningful legacy of the ceremony. If you line up the royal families of the past beside the one we see today, the contrast in parenting style is almost like flipping to a new book entirely. Today, things look very different. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, are often seen in more relaxed settings. We've watched them play, squabble like siblings do, giggle at public events, and even wave confidently to the crowd. These moments are part of a new pattern where warmth and relatability matter just as much as protocol. The old standard says, duty above all else. Royal children were raised to serve, and their personalities often came second to their titles. But William and Kate have rewritten that script. Their children are still being prepared for responsibility, especially George, but they're also being encouraged to grow into themselves, to understand their place in the world without being overwhelmed by it. The public has noticed. In the past, royals were often seen as distant figures, towering behind palace gates. But now, the growing affection toward the Wales family has a lot to do with their visibility and humanity. William and Kate haven't given up tradition, but they've softened its edges. That balance of grace and openness has reshaped the monarchy's reputation, especially among younger generations. It also matters for the future. Prince George will one day wear the crown, but he's being raised to understand not just how to lead, but how to listen. He's being groomed as a modern monarch, compassionate, emotionally present, and aware of the world beyond palace walls. Charlotte and Louis, meanwhile, are growing up in an environment that allows them to be seen as more than just royal backups. As the sun reached its peak, Kate felt its warmth on her face, and her thoughts turned to her own children. Princess Charlotte, now recognized for her composure at public events, often reminded Kate of herself at that age, though with even greater confidence. Recently, Charlotte had taken part in her first solo charity engagement, helping to pack aid boxes for underprivileged children. Kate had been deeply touched by the way her daughter bowed her head during the moment of silence, reflecting the same solemnity and respect that filled the day. It reminded Kate that the values honored here, courage, service, and compassion, were the same ones she hoped to pass on to her children. Looking at the families gathered before her, she knew this day wasn't an ending, but a beginning, a continuation of love, community, and resilience. Stepping back quietly to give the families their space, Kate carried their stories in her heart, just like the names engraved on the memorial wall, never to be forgotten. We'd love to hear from you. What would you like to say to the royal family and to the brave heroes we honor today? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you appreciated this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And click the next video on your screen. For more, you'll enjoy.